Hello, my name is Rich Stalls. I am a solutions engineer who works at Blackboard, an educational technology company that services clients all around the world. Now, I just wanted to briefly talk about how we can use virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality to enhance the teaching and learning experience. Now, in this session, we'll look at an introduction to what XR is, or cross reality, a learning and teaching foundation or pedagogical approach, and how we can use these new technologies in a very thought out and intentional way to not just give the students a wow experience, but to impact their learning. And we'll look at a demonstration of using cross reality in a learning management system. We'll be using Blackboard Learn Ultra for that today. Now let's look at what cross reality is. Now, XR, or cross reality, is a term that captures a range of technologies in the virtual, augmented, mixed reality space. It describes technologies that augment the human senses by creating a blend or a mixture between the extremes of reality and virtuality. Let's look at augmented and mixed realities. Now, these allow people to perceive the world as a single, seamless environment that contains both digital content, usually overlaid or mixed in with the real world. Now, there's AR and MR apps on mobile devices and tablets and mobile phones that allow you to overlay over the camera digital objects into the real world. And then you've got all the way up to specific devices such as the Microsoft's HoloLens pictured here, which gives you a far higher fidelity experience. When we're looking at virtual reality, we're looking at technologies that provide the user with a highly responsive and fully immersive experience in a fully constructed virtual environment. So instead of using the real world and adding in digital content, this is an entirely created world in the virtual space. And as you can see here, there's a couple of headsets, and also this refers to things like we call them caves here in our region, but wraparound virtual walls where you can explore using gestures, or even pads that you can walk through. And this person here is using it for physiotherapy rehabilitation. So let's look at a single learning and teaching foundation, or a pedagogical approach that you could possibly use to base your uses of these technologies in your teaching and learning experience. So we're going to look at one here, which I'm calling situated experiential learning. And this is where we're going to explore using virtual reality with experiential learning and situated cognition. So what does that all mean? Let's just quickly unpack that a little bit. Now, experiential learning enables learners to interact directly with the world they are studying. So rather than abstracting it out to concepts or models, they get to manipulate and experience the actual real world artifacts or interactions that they're studying about. And when we're talking about situated cognition, we're really talking about learning in context, where you position the learning process in the world that they're studying. And this helps avoid decontextualized learning experiences, where it's a bit hard for the students to sort of connect the dots all the way back to the real world. So when we're talking about situated and experiential learning, there's three factors we want to be looking at when we're implementing some of these technologies. We're looking at immersion, and we're giving the students a sense of presence within the world. We're looking at interaction. This is an important feature of it that is not obviously and readily available in some of these technologies, but we want the students to be able to interact with the teacher, and as well as with other students. And we're talking about complexity. In this sense, we're not talking about the complexity of the learning experience itself, but we're talking about a pedagogical complexity that reflects the complexity of the real world, rather than taking a very complex, let's choose an example we'll explore later, is such as the Syrian refugee crisis, a very complex, multivariate problem. And if we just abstract it down to a couple of principles, we really aren't learning something that's going to be useful in that context. And so we want to have the learning experience reflecting the complexity of problems that are grounded in the real world. So let's look at how you might, so some ideas of how you might put these in practice. So these are just a couple of small ways that I thought an instructor could take some of these ideas and put them into practice in their learning management system or their learning experiences. So let's look at immersion. So one example is which is readily available, is immersive 360 videos, such as this one here I've got from YouTube. Your institution, if it licenses a video management system like Kaltura, they may be housed in there. There's a number of 360 photographs and a number of devices which you can capture your own resources there. But by using these, you could create a sense of immersion where you're situating the learning experience, situating the learner in context. So it might be a specific geographical context, such as a country, Italy, for example, maybe a specific ethnographical context, such as this festival here, or a historical context. And these resources will help. They're not designed to be the entire learning experience, but using the virtual reality, augmented reality technologies, and using something like a 360-degree video, you would be able to use it intentionally for that part, just to simply situate them in and get them, I guess, in the frame of mind or in the mode of learning ready, that they're no longer sitting in their classroom, but they've had a somewhat of an experience to situate them cognitively in the context that you're going to be learning about. How about interaction? So one of the current shortcomings of a lot of these technologies, for example here, if you put this headset on, you're suddenly closed off to the rest of the world, and it's very hard to maintain that interaction with staff, with instructors and your peers as you're learning. So consider using the other tools that are available to you. For example, a discussion board. You may want to take the students on a learning experience involving a virtual reality experience, and then ask them to reflect on it in a discussion board and interact that way. Or maybe even ask them to, instead of using words, they can develop a video as a expression of their reflection of what that experience meant to them, and interact that way. Remember, the interaction doesn't all have to be within that technology. Combine the tools that you've got to round out that teaching and learning experience. When we're talking about complexity, remember I mentioned the complexity involved in something like the Syrian refugee crisis. There are resources such as is available at a immersive 360 documentary site called Within. And there's a couple of there. This example here, Clouds Over Sidra, is a immersive documentary that allows you to hear the story from a Syrian refugee. I believe it's a 13-year-old young lady, and hearing her story and seeing the sights and experience the sights and sounds in an immersive way from her point of view. That gives you that greater sense of the complexity involved and the humanity involved in that. There's just a few ways that you could quickly brainstorm about using parts of these technologies to meet parts of the different pedagogies out there, rather than expecting the technology to do the entire thing. Is to put together, as instructors do every day, constructing a learning experience, but now leveraging some of these technologies in a very intentional and pedagogically sound way. So here I want to explore a case study from the Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand. Now, they wanted to take the students on a journey where they had a far deeper understanding of the complexities involved in sustainable development in small island nations. And so it's not always possible to take the students on a field trip to somewhere like Fiji. So what they did was they actually built a 2-scale, authentically modeled Fijian village. So they used Unity 3D, a development environment, and they developed a fully constructed virtual world that was 2-scale and authentically based on site visits to this Fijian village, and allowed the students to explore the village there and interact with the villagers via some embedded videos. Now they used virtual reality headsets to experience this, and it allowed them to get a sense of scale, because they would walk through the village and get a sense of the scale of what was going on there, and interact and hearing firsthand from the residents of that village their experiences. And so rather than abstracting some of these complexity into words on a page or a couple of principles, they allowed the students to experience it within an immersive environment there. And they were hoping that the students would develop that deeper understanding of those complexities involved. And when they interviewed the students, they found that the students really did report a strong sense of immersion using this experience. And they were found that they were really able to identify some of those integrated and complex nature of the topic involved, and it allowed the ideal experience would be to take the students to this Fijian village and experience for themselves, but that wasn't always possible. So this was a step back using the technologies, and they found that they achieved many of the same outcomes that they achieved in those site visits. So I've just briefly wanted to show you this here, to get you thinking about some of the apps that are out there. And this is a very, very small list of the enormous resources that are out there. But I thought if you're new to it, this would get you started. So I've broken out in 3 kinds of things you might be wanting to do. So I've put expeditions. Now, expeditions take your learners on a virtual field trip and tour. You may not have the budget to produce a immersive experience in a Fijian village, but you can leverage some of the things out there, such as Google Expeditions, Google Arts and Culture, Smithsonian's got some virtual tours, and many of the institutions around there are putting immersive tours available freely online for you and your students to use. And you can take those and house them in the learning management system in a place that makes sense in the flow of the learning experience you want the students to have. Immersive narrative, I believe this is one of the things that augmented and virtual reality really has a lot of power in. Virtual reality's been called by some the ultimate empathy engine, and having those immersive narrative really helps them connect to the story that is going on, but also the context of where that story sits. Things like Discovery VR, those immersive documentaries in Within, or YouTube VR, there's a number of resources out there. Exploration, so you're using immersive exploration to bring abstract context and concepts to life. There's a couple of there, Nearpod VR, Google Augmented Reality Tours. Now that one there is quite good because it allows you to take somewhat abstract concepts like let's take a molecular structure, bringing it into a 3D model where the students can use their devices using augmented reality to explore the model and even manipulate it in some contexts. And I wanted to highlight a resource here called Wonder VR. You can Google that there. It's a development environment, and if you have the skills, the level of skills in technology to produce a PowerPoint presentation with animations, you probably have enough skills to produce a immersive learning experience. And I'll show you one that I've put together quite quickly about a cell tour, to a cell plant tour and an immersive experience there. I put a little note here to remember to use these technologies intentionally to meet a specific objective of your learning experiences, not just to be a bit of a shiny wow factor, but by basing it on a solid teaching and learning foundation, you're going to multiply your efforts for the students. So let's now look at a demonstration of using cross realities in Blackboard Learn Ultra. So this is housing these experiences in the learning management system so there's not a disconnected additional experience that is to the side of the main learning, which is how I've often seen it implemented. But if you're housing the experience within the learning management system, you're able to really situate it in the flow of the learning. It's in a place that the students are familiar with, and you leverage all of the tracking and reporting and accessibility, and you're able to also leverage a lot of the other tools to make the best use of this. Okay, so I'm going to go to stop that down, and I'm going to go here to a demonstration environment of Blackboard Learn Ultra. Now here I've developed a course called X Reality Across Reality in Blackboard. So let's look at it here. So remember we talked about having it based on a solid teaching and learning foundation, and we explored one of them, which was like that situated learning. Now instead of attempting or trying to do an entire learning experience fully immersed, you can just use a portion of that learning experience using a portion of the technology where it makes sense. For instance, here, using the example here, we're teaching Italian for beginners. Now instead of launching, which I've put in part 2, launching into a sort of a multimedia language learning experience where they're seeing some pictures, seeing some words, hearing some sounds and hearing them pronounced. How about we take a step back and before launching into language learning in the classroom, very disconnected from the context of Italy, how about we first of all situate the students cognitively in an Italian environment? And you could use a number of resources. Here I've chosen a Discovery VR video, a 360 video for Italy. Now, the reason why I think this kind of approach is so powerful is because it's not trying to do the whole thing. It's just choosing one part, which is a sense of connectedness to the context in an immersive way. And here, because it's situated in the learning management system, it's clearly situated in the part of the learning sequence that I've designed for my learners. But also you can see here it's quite easy to wrap a very engaging support resource around here. So you can see instead of me having to go around every single student and show them how they should use it, there's the link, some explanatory text, and even a short video or image showing them how they can do this, use this learning experience. So in the classroom or even for online students, the learning experience is not divorced from the flow of the learning, it's not divorced from the support resources that I can put in there. Now, all I've done as an instructor, I put a single link here to the resource. Now, the beauty of this kind of use of the technology is that it will recognize what kind of device I'm using and deliver the level of experience that is appropriate. So let's have a look at it. Now I'm accessing it on a desktop. I don't have a whole lot of sort of virtual reality capabilities, but let's click on it. As you can see here, let's actually make it full screen to give it a bit more of an idea. So now that just looks like a window into the world, but because it is a 360 video, I can use my mouse to click and drag and explore around the environment. So although not a fully immersive experience, it does scale it back to a scrollable window into Italy. And it's quite nice because you get the sights and sounds, and there's Italian language markers all through the experience to situate the students in that place. So let's just pause that. So that's if I access that on a desktop. Now what if I had something like my mobile device? So many of our learners do have these. Some schools and institutions have bring your own device policies. Now let's just see if that's going to open that up for me. Okay. So now here I've opened up Blackboard Learn Ultra on my mobile device, and you can see it's quite responsive, and it's nicely scaled that down to my mobile device. Same sort of thing, and here, and this is the important thing for a mobile device. It says how I'm going to launch it here using that. Now I'll just pause quickly to show you a couple of the things I've got here with me. This is a Blackboard branded Google Cardboard. Now it's basically cardboard with a couple of lenses, and it's designed to be able to place your phone in and have an immersive 360 experience. I've got one here I picked up for about $15. Now this one here is a bit more sturdy. It's got some straps, and but it is designed to house your phone in. So it uses the same technology as a Google Cardboard, but it's a little bit sturdy, a bit more easy to use for longer experiences. And I've got a Oculus 360 Go virtual reality helmet and controller here, which we'll look at it in a different demonstration. But let's have a look here. I'm using my mobile device. So, very same part of the course. As an instructor, I haven't had to do anything different, but the student will click on that. It recognizes that I'm using a mobile device, and so it's going to take me across to the app, the YouTube app. And when I tap on it, you can see here, because I've got this device, it allows me to select the Google Cardboard experience. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on that. So you can see that instead of having just a normal screen, it's got these funny little glasses looking things. So what I'm going to do is actually go ahead and place it in the Google Cardboard. And the idea is that the lenses take this view and allow me to explore Italy in a far more immersive way, in a 360 stereoscopic way. Same resource, but it recognized that I'm using a mobile device for this. So I won't show you at this time, but if we went and loaded up the web browser within Oculus Go, clicked on the very same link, would know actually this is far more capable than the desktop or the mobile device, and give me a very rich and immersive experience using this. And so intentionally using that resource to situate the students in Italy and the Italian sounds and language sounds and sights. One resource scales up all the way and gives students, no matter what device they're using on, a good experience. Now I did talk about Wonder VR. Now I'm going to tap on that there. So this is a learning module I've put together using the Wonder VR application, and as you can see here, it's a fairly self-contained learning experience, and because I've clicked it on a desktop, I get the desktop experience where again I can sort of look around by dragging and interacting with materials. Again, if I had accessed it using the mobile device, I would get something that would be compatible with the cardboard. Now, but what I want to show you is maybe an experience using an Oculus Go, so having a far more immersive experience. So I'm just going to let that activate. Okay, and as you can see, I've preloaded it into the experience there. Again, I could have gone into the web browser on the Oculus Go, into the same place, clicked on that link, but because the device, the resource would recognize that I'm on a very high-end device, it gives me this far greater experience. So I'm going to just pop that on and show you what that might look like a little bit here. So I can look around the experience here, and I'm not sure if you can hear the sounds here. It's a 360 environment. I'm learning about plant cells, so I'm standing out here in a field. There's the scions of the field, and I can actually look across there at a virtual plant cell exploration. Now, I've used a Creative Commons video from an organisation here in Western Australia, and they've developed a immersive cell tour here, and I'm actually flying through the cell, and I can explore and look around and see how everything is working. And it would take me on a guided tour, and I won't go too in depth, but here it's going to take me through all parts of the cell and explain not only what they do, but I get a sense of where they're located in the cell, how they're interacting with other parts of the cell, and it takes me on an idea of how everything fits together and interacts together. So I'm going to go out of that. Now the other thing, you can look at some more resources there, but I've also put a little test your knowledge multiple choice question that you can put in here and just get a bit of immediate feedback on what you're doing. So as you can see, that didn't take too long to develop a resource that could scale through the devices. Housing it in the learning management system allows it to not only maintain its place in the structure and flow of learning. I can wrap around appropriate learning resources. I can leverage other tools. For instance, that is a very it's very hard to interact with my peers using this. So if I put it in the learning management system, I can put a discussion board underneath which takes care of that interactive component. There might be an accessible component that's more than just the self-test quiz there. So instead of taking these kinds of technologies and thinking of them as a special out-of-the-box, to-the-side learning experience, seeing them as just yet another piece of the toolkit for an instructor, and seeing them take their place within the flow of the learning management system, it becomes far more accessible and far easier for our staff and students to be using them. So let's just have a look at the final part of the presentation here. So we've looked at the demonstration. I just wanted to highlight a couple of resources that Blackboard does have, and we put together a cross-reality pedagogical toolkit where we cover a lot of the materials I've talked about here in this session, but it also goes into some other pedagogies, some other teaching and learning foundations, some further case studies, and gives you all of the references for what we looked at today. And we'll also put this up here, that allows you to download the Wonder VR app for yourself on the phone, and scanning that QR code will allow you to explore that teaching and learning lesson I put together there for yourself and get a feel of what using a Google Cardboard viewer with your phone is available for your students. So that's all I have for you today. I hope that gives you a good sense of our approach to using these new immersive technologies to enhance the teaching and learning experience by basing them on a solid, well thought out foundation of teaching and learning, those pedagogical foundations, and then not hoping that the technology is the entire experience, but becomes yet another part of the toolkit to develop a well-rounded, solidly planned out teaching and learning experience for your students.